On October 2nd, 1969, a young woman walked into a hotel room in Oakland, California. She was never identified. More than 56 years later, no one knows who she was, where she came from, or who is waiting for her. The man suspected of killing her has never been found either. This is a story with 2 missing people and no answers. October 2nd, 1969, Oakland, California. Someone at the St. Louis Hotel on 7th Street called the police. They had heard screaming from room 15. When officers arrived and pushed open the door, they found a young woman lying on the bed. She had been beaten. She had been strangled with a piece of her own clothing. She had been dead for only a few hours. She was wearing a white knit dress. A white sweater and white boots were on the floor nearby. She had short auburn hair and blue eyes. She looked to be somewhere between 16 and 25 years old, and no one, not the hotel staff, not the other guests, not anyone in the neighborhood, could tell the police who she was. The autopsy gave investigators a few details to work with. She was white, roughly 5'5", 105 pounds, slim build. She had a partial denture plate, a commercially made replacement for a missing front upper tooth repaired multiple times, suggesting it was old and she had worn it for years. She had scarring on her right forearm and right hand, and she had needle marks on the inside of both elbows. She had been using drugs. Investigators noted everything. They photographed her. They took her fingerprints. They recorded every physical detail they could find. And then they waited for someone to come forward and say they recognized her. No one did. The Oakland Police Department issued bulletins. They circulated her description to law enforcement agencies across California. They checked missing persons reports. Nobody matched. Nobody called. In the weeks and months that followed, the case began its slow descent into the cold case files. The woman in room 15 became a number, Alameda County Case 1969-02266, Oakland Police Department Case 6966670. On the national database, she would eventually be entered as NamUs Case 10945, but she was never given a name. There are 2 mysteries locked inside this case. The first, who was the woman in room 15? The second, where is the man who killed her? Because investigators knew almost immediately who they were looking for. They had a name, a description, and witnesses who had seen him walk into that hotel with her. His name was Taylor Morris Teaford, and at the time of her murder, he was already one of the most wanted men in the United States. Both of them have been missing ever since. One in death, one on the run. If you want to understand how a murder case can go 56 years without a name or an arrest, stay with us. To understand this case, you need to understand where it happened. Oakland in 1969 was a city under pressure. The Civil Rights Movement, the Vietnam War, the collapse of industrial employment, all of it was reshaping American cities in real time. The flatlands of Oakland, where 7th Street runs, were home to a population living on the margins. The St. Louis Hotel was the kind of place where you paid by the night and nobody asked for your name. It was exactly the kind of place where a young woman could disappear, and exactly the kind of place where, for decades, disappearances did not receive the same attention as crimes in wealthier parts of town. The man witnesses saw entering room 15 with the victim that evening was Taylor Morris Teaford, 34 years old, 6 feet tall, powerfully built, Native American, originally from North Fork, California. Teaford was not unknown to law enforcement. His story escalated dramatically on July 18, 1967, when he shot and killed his 72-year-old grandmother in North Fork, wounded his sister, and fled into the mountains. He was never captured. In May 1968, the FBI placed him on their 10 most wanted fugitives list, one of only 10 names in the entire country carried on that list at any given time. He was considered armed, extremely dangerous, and capable of extraordinary violence. What makes this case even darker is that the murder of the Jane Doe was not the only violent death connected to Teaford in 1969. 6 months before her murder, on April 10th, the badly beaten body of 22-year-old Judith Latiker was found beside the Oakland estuary. 4 months after that, the body of 27-year-old Alma Faye Doro was recovered from Berkeley Aquatic Park. Investigators began drawing connections between these 3 killings, similar victim profiles, similar areas, similar brutality. The press gave the suspected killer a name, the Crew Cut Killer. It is important to be clear about what is established fact and what is speculation in this case. What is confirmed, witnesses saw Teaford enter room 15 with the Jane Doe on the evening of October 2nd. A warrant for murder was issued for him in 1972, and that warrant remains active. What is unconfirmed, whether Teaford was responsible for the deaths of Latiker and Doro as well. The connection is credible. It is not proven. In true crime, the difference between those 2 things matters enormously. In May 1972, Taylor Teaford was removed from the FBI's 10 most wanted list, not because he had been caught, not because he had been exonerated. The original federal charge was dismissed in federal court in Fresno. But the murder warrant issued by Oakland in connection with the Jane Doe's death remained in effect. It still does. Teaford has not been seen since July 1967. If he is still alive today, he is in his late 80s. Most investigators who have worked the case believe he is likely dead. But without a confirmed death, the warrant stays open. While investigators pursued Teaford, the deeper question was never answered. Who was she? That partial denture tells a story by itself. It was commercially made, not custom-fitted by a dentist. It had been repaired multiple times. Someone had broken it, fixed it, broken it again, fixed it again. A person who could not easily afford a dentist. The scarring on her right hand and forearm suggests old injuries. The needle marks on both inner elbows suggest she had been using intravenous drugs for some time. This was someone living a hard life in circumstances that made her invisible to the systems that might have found her. In 1969, the United States had no centralized missing persons database. There was no NamUs, no national system for comparing unidentified remains against missing persons reports. Law enforcement agencies in different counties, different states, different jurisdictions did not routinely share information. A family who stopped hearing from their daughter would have no way of knowing that an unidentified young woman matching her description had died in an Oakland hotel room. The systemic failures that allowed the Jane Doe to go unidentified were not unique to her case. They were built into the infrastructure of the era. For decades, the case went cold in the most literal sense. The Jane Doe's fingerprints existed in the system, but fingerprint matching requires a known reference set. And if she had never been arrested, never been processed by any government system that took her prints, there was nothing to match against. She existed as a physical description in a file cabinet. The world moved on. She did not. In 2020, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children created a forensic facial reconstruction of the Jane Doe, a digitally rendered image of what she may have looked like in life, built from the physical descriptions in the 1969 Autopsy report. A second reconstruction was produced by Project EDAN, a volunteer organization dedicated to giving faces to the unidentified. Two different artists, two different techniques, both producing the image of a young woman with short dark hair and a slim face, looking out at whoever might recognize her. So far, no one has come forward to say, "I know her." Today, the Oakland Jane Doe's case is listed in the National Missing and Unidentified Person System under case number 10945. Her fingerprints are on file and available for comparison. The case remains active at both the Oakland Police Department and the Alameda County Sheriff's Coroner's Bureau. What has not happened, what the passage of 56 years has failed to produce, is a DNA profile suitable for genetic genealogy. The evidence that exists may not be sufficient for the methods that are solving cases like this today. Forensic genetic genealogy has transformed cold case investigations in the past decade. Techniques that identified the Golden State Killer in 2018 have now given names to hundreds of previously unidentified victims. Cases that sat cold for 30, 40, 50 years have been resolved because a distant cousin uploaded their DNA to an ancestry database and an investigator found the thread. But this technology requires viable biological material. Whether the Oakland Jane Doe's case can benefit from these methods depends entirely on whether samples collected in 1969, more than half a century ago, have been preserved well enough to yield usable genetic material. That question has not been publicly answered. Here is the cruelest possibility in this case. The woman in room 15 may have had family somewhere who reported her missing and never received an answer. A mother who kept expecting a call that never came. A sibling who wondered. Children, if she had them, growing up with a blank space where a parent should be. Or, and this is the other possibility that investigators quietly acknowledge, she may have been so far outside every system, so completely isolated from family and community that no one reported her missing at all. Not because no one loved her, but because the circumstances of her life had placed her beyond reach. Both possibilities are devastating. And after 56 years, there is no way to know which one is true. Two unsolved mysteries bound together in a single hotel room on a single October night in 1969. A woman whose name no one knows. A man whose location no one knows. The murder weapon was her own clothing, and the person charged with using it has never faced a courtroom. The victim has never been given a funeral with her name spoken over it. There is a warrant, still active, for a man who would be nearly 90 years old. There is a forensic reconstruction posted to databases and websites and social media, waiting for the right person to see it and say, "That is someone I knew." So far, that person has not appeared. She was somewhere between 16 and 25 years old. She had auburn hair and blue eyes. She wore white boots and carried a repaired denture she had probably owned for years. She had scars on her right hand and arm. She was in Oakland, California on October 2nd, 1969. And that is the last thing anyone can say about her with certainty. Somewhere in the United States, there is a family that lost her, There may be a brother or sister, a child, a parent, someone whose family tree has a gap in it that matches the shape of this woman exactly. If you recognize her, if any detail of this case connects to someone you knew, the Oakland Police Department and the Alameda County Coroner's Office are still taking tips. After 56 years, someone out there still owes her a name. If this kind of story keeps you up at night, if you believe the forgotten deserve to be remembered, subscribe to Mysteonix USA. We will keep telling the stories that have not been resolved until they are.